Hi, I'm Jennifer, and welcome to my library. This book talk video is going to be on the second book in the School for Good and Evil series, A World Without Princes. Now, this book picks up about a year after. Well, hold on. Let's get to the back cover first. In the epic sequel to the New York Times best-selling novel, The School for Good and Evil, Sophie and Agatha are home, living out their ever after. But life isn't quite the fairy tale they expected. When Agatha secretly wishes she'd chosen a different happy ending, she reopens the gates to the School for Good and Evil. But the world she and Sophie once knew has changed. Witches and princesses, warlocks and princes are no longer enemies. New bonds are forming, old bonds are being shattered. But underneath this uneasy arrangement, a war is brewing and a dangerous enemy rises. As Agatha and Sophie battle to restore peace, an unexpected threat could destroy everything and everyone they love. And this time, it comes from within. Now, this book takes place about a year after the first one. And Sophie's father is getting remarried, and Sophie's not really happy about it. She and Agatha when they first came back, they were treated as heroes. They were the first children to return from the School for Good and Evil. And there were statues built to them. They would talk and give autographs outside the church every Sunday after Mass and whatnot. And then, as with most things, it started to die down and everybody basically forgot about it. Now, Sophie doesn't want to give that up. She loves being the center of attention. She loved being the center of attention. So she has the brilliant idea of putting on a play about what happened to them. And Agatha's willing to go along with it to keep Sophie happy, because that's just the kind of person Agatha is. And Sophie keeps making this more elaborate and more elaborate. And then during the wedding, and then Sophie starts to notice some changes about her, and she really, really, really wants to stay good. She doesn't want to turn back into the witch that she turned into in the first book. So she tries everything she can to be good. So she tries to accept her father's wedding to her new stepmother, and the fact that she's going to be a big sister to two little stepbrothers and whatnot. And she tries to put on a brave face and be, the quintessential good girl. She really, really does. And then she and Agatha are swept back into this fairy tale world, back to the schools for good and evil. Only it's not the School for Good and Evil anymore. It is the school for boys and girls. The boys now occupy Evil's castle, and the girls occupy Good's castle. And the only way to set things right is for them to go home is for one of two things to happen. They have to get the storm, which was stolen and is now in the school for boys, and have to wish to be together forever, and it'll send both of them home. Or Agatha has to kiss her prince and have the ending that the book should have had, that their story should have had in the first place. So that's the big premises of the story. They have to do. The thing is, with the wish, if they decide to wish to be together, they both have to mean it. If there's any doubt in either one of their minds that this is the ever after, the happily ever after that they wanted, the wish won't work. Now, there is a new character in the story, and her name is Evelyn Sater, and she is the dean for the School for Girls, and she is basically encouraging Sophie and Agatha to make their wish to be friends. And she is also encouraging this war between the girls and the boys. And she is she's rewrote everything about the history. She makes it seem like men were overbearing characters in all the stories and changed everything. She changed the endings of all the stories, like, you know, Cinderella only married a prince so she could get control of the kingdom, and when she did, she secretly divorced him, and all this, and she just changes everything to make men look bad. And Agatha's looking at all this, and she's like, this doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right to me. But all the other girls are just infatuated with her. They love it. Agatha and the three witches from the previous book are the only ones that are looking at this, and it's like, are the only students that are looking at this and are like, this just doesn't seem right. And all the teachers are basically afraid of Evelyn, and they just don't want to speak up against her. And the thing was, she was banished from the school like 10 years ago. And she has a master plan, which I really don't want to reveal too much in the book, but it does have to do with Sophie and Agatha. And again, Sophie gets it into her. Sophie is trying to be good in this series. She's trying to be the friend that Agatha was to her throughout the whole series. And excuse me, it's just not working. I mean, it does seem like it, and Agatha keeps telling herself, well, she has to be good. She has to be good. She's doing all this so we can go home. She has to be good. But when she secretly goes to see her prince to try and get the happy ending because she's afraid Agatha's turning into the witch, something happens, and she tries to put it out of her mind. She tries to tell herself that it was her prince that did this, but it wasn't. And Sophie is just keeping secrets and whatnot. And a big part of the story is Sophie coming to terms with, well, not so much Sophie coming to terms with what's going on, but them trying to figure out what's really going on, who the real villain of this story is, and whatnot, and what changed everything. And what the new dean of the School for Good is after, and what her ultimate endgame is. Another big part of the book is Agatha realizing that maybe her and Sophie being together isn't a good thing, that maybe they should be kept separate from each other, but admitting it to herself. And it's really a good book. I don't want to reveal too much about what happens in it, as it is a really good book. I loved it just as much as I loved the first one. They do have 2 sneak peek chapters of the 3rd book in the series. Chapter 1, The Master and the Queen, and Chapter 2, After Ever After, which is good. They had a missing section, or a deleted scene from the first book at the end of this book as well, which I thought was great. I didn't read it, but I thought that was interesting. You don't really see it. You mean you'll see deleted scenes like in movies, but not so much in books. And whatnot. And it's just a lot of what was going on. Like, this classes even changed. It was like, I don't really get into the boy classes because we're not really flip-flopping between the 2 schools all that much, since both main characters are in the one school. and the boys don't really have classes until near the trial part, but it's there. They do focus on the classes. The classes changed a lot. It's just the way the new dean changed the school was just getting rid of every trace of boys in the school. And just saying, oh, you don't need boys at all. Boys are only good for one thing and one thing only, and you know, we don't need them, kind of thing. It's like, it really brings about a sense of prejudice in this, and like the prejudice between the two genders. And it's like, I don't know how to explain this, but it's like there is a reason fairy tales end a certain way, and not all fairy tales end with excuse me, you know, the prince getting the princess. Not all of them end that way, but they all end on basically the same note, and that is the kind of the way that Agatha and Sophie's story was supposed to end. And it does have a very twist ending, but I don't want to get into it too much. So I'm going to basically just leave the description of the book at that. Now, at the end of my first video on the School for Good and Evil, I placed a riddle before you. And that was the riddle that was in the book. And that is, what is the one thing that evil can never have, but love can do without? And I asked you to try and figure out what that would be. Now, the answer is love. If you read if you're like have read fairy tales or seen any fairy tale movies, you always see them ending with the prince and princess getting married, and the villain who is striving for love never getting it. Now, they do portray that in the first book. They don't really, and in this one. Now, in this one they do, however, try to portray a different kind of love, and that is the love between friends, which, you know, is still love. There are many different kinds of love and whatnot. And, but so this is actually but that's the answer to the riddle. And I'm gonna wrap up this video. Feel free to leave your comments and questions, your opinions and questions, excuse me, in the comment section. That helps me out a lot. Also, feel free to you know, like and subscribe. That also helps me. And feel free to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, as the information will be in the description part. I'm Jennifer. Excuse me. This has been Book Talk. Thank you for visiting my library, and I will see you again.